What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Spine Farm Records headquarters, and today we got Atreyu.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. It's so awesome to have you here. You guys played an epic show at St. Vitus last night. I still got the hand stamp.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, the battle wounds.
That means your hands are dirty. I'm just kidding.
Don't touch me. It's in the world of metal.
It
all
is.
of our hands are dirty.
Filth.
It's
good.
Exactly. But your newest record, In Our Wake, I was just listening to it. It's awesome. I got the record early. Sorry, guys. But let's just give a rundown on how the making of it was.
It's kind of a little bit longer process than usual. I think we kind of took it like real casual, step by step, and we had gone in with John Feldman for the first time back in the summer, last summer. And did about 5 songs or 6 songs. We took a week with him and wrote about 5 or 6 songs, and then kind of sat on them and like kind of got to listen to what we had so far and kind of figure out where we wanted the record to go and what we were missing, and gave us a chance to kind of really, I think, like think of a record as a whole rather than just like right, go in the studio. Like we had time to digest it and then went back again. November, December?
Yeah.
And finished the rest of this, wrote the rest of the songs. Everything we wrote was in the studio, aside from a couple riffs that we had coming in, but everything was kind of just like in the moment. You know,
it was kind of set up like a workshop too. Yeah. Like he'd be in there doing drums or vocals or something, and Dan and I would be in another room doing guitars. So at all times there was being work done, which we've never really done before.
Yeah.
Okay, it would be like, all right, let's get the drum beat down, then let's put the guitar down. Like there would be like a minute where somebody's like doing nothing the whole time.
Not really. I mean, everyone would always be busy, but even like with writing, there would be times where like me and Alex and John would be writing like in the living room or like somewhere else. And then like we'd come back and they'd been writing another song. So that day we'd have like 2 songs we were working on. It was kind of cool, just like fully creative at all times, just like bouncing off of each other.
Yeah, I guess that would keep you all like equally like in the same like workflow, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah. Now, would you consider this record to be kind of like a direct follow-up to Long Live, or would you consider this record to kind of stand out in its own entity?
I'd say stand out in the sense, I feel like Atreyu is such a versatile band. We have so many directions that we go in musically, vocally, and all these things, to where I feel like every album that we put out is kind of like a shining of certain elements of our band. In this case, we did more like arena rock, big sounding kind of things, kind of similar to Lead Sails, but you know, obviously because it was done with John Feldman, who did that album. But again, it's its own beast. We've pushed ourselves again in directions, doing things we've never done before. Yeah. We don't want any album to be predictable in one way or another. You know, we want it to be something where it's like, okay, like this is, I've never heard Trey do this before, but it works, and we're kind of, you know, stretching the boundaries and limits of what bands like us would normally do.
Yeah. I feel like each record is like, it's very much a timestamp too, of like, I feel like every record we ever put out is a very clear timestamp of like where the 5 of our heads are at that moment. And like people change, you go through different things, your tastes change, your kind of ambitions change as what you want to do as a musician and as a writer. And that kind of, you can see that in our albums that have moved around, because sometimes like there's been times where we want, like Long Live, we just want to write a fucking blistering heavy album, and at the time that was like what we wanted, and that's what that was.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you kind of go up and down with where your inspiration lies and what you want to kind of create. So that's very much, it's the same thing you were saying too. It's like we're always trying to do something different, but like every record of ours is, I think, the way it is because it's just a timestamp of like that's where we were at then, you know.
Absolutely, and you know, kind of going back to what you said about the diversity in the sound. What I find so unique about Atreyu is that your songs have many different sounds, but they also have many different emotions. You take a song like Blow, to me that has kind of like a party, you know, hangout vibe, but then you take a song like Storm to Pass, which is a little more on the melancholy side of Atreyu. So it's fair to say that when you guys are writing music, you're writing what you feel, and you feel many different emotions when writing music, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think Dan's always a good, Dan's always the good gauge of like knowing we need the party song, or knowing like what we need, you know, what we're missing.
You
and,
definitely
like, a lot of times,
looked like that last night.
But like he'll come with like, you know, like we need a fucking ripper, you know, like we have the sad songs, we have the brutal songs, like, you know what I mean. So like he's always kind of a really good gauge of like understanding what we're missing at the time, you know.
Awesome.
Trying to create because when you put an album out, you don't want every song to sound and feel the same, feel like the same 12 songs, whatever. We want it to be like a journey. We want every song to be very unique from the next. And
peaks and valleys.
Yeah, peaks and valleys, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some bands where kind of like consistency is sort of key. Like if you're like a Deicide or a Cannibal Corpse, you know, it's just like relentless death metal. Everybody will be happy. But I really feel like for you guys, like diversity and experimentation is definitely
key. Yeah, I think that's key for us. Like, we've always been a kind of a genre bending band, even with who we toured with. Like from the beginning, we've done Ozfest and we've also done Warped Tour. We've toured with Lamb of God and we toured with Taking Back Sunday. Like we've kind of bent that so crazily that it has worked for us. So like it really does allow us to kind of explore into either direction that we want. Like it's hilarious. Last night, like we played our new single "The Time Is Now" and followed it with "Bleeding Mascara," which is arguably like one of our fastest, most metal songs we've ever written. And like our fans didn't blink. Like nobody. Like, it was just like, yep, this is Atreyu and this is what it does.
Exactly. And, you know, I wasn't kind of like surprised, you know, to play Right Side of the Bed and Blow and X's and O and, you know, all the new stuff. It seemed like you kind of like got the audience's attention the whole time. But what I was curious is playing with diverse bands, you know, like I remember you were on Mayhem Fest with like Hatebreed and Norma Jean and Korn and all those bands. But then, you know, you played at Warped Tour. You played with Woven War the last time I saw you guys. And now you're doing a tour with Memphis May Fire. Yeah. So do you maybe, kind of like two questions in one, do you kind of like notice maybe a different reaction depending on who you tour with? And do you kind of sometimes like adjust your set list? Like, oh, we're playing with a more metal band. Let's put our heavier songs in.
We kind of do. It's funny because like we've definitely put on that hat depending on where we've, you know, what shows we're playing. Like, but at the same time, I feel like when we just go out and do us, like that's what connects. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, you know, touring with bands, like I said, Taking Back Sunday, or doing a Warped Tour set, or doing an Ozfest set, like no matter what, even the heavy songs are still melodic and this and that, so it's always kind of diverse, and I think that's what like our fans just connect to it because I don't know, like we subtly can alter, but our band just sounds so different from song to song that it's like hard to just go out and do our thing. And
I think that has a lot to do with our success is the fact that we can play these different festivals, play with all these different bands instead of just going down the same road over and over and over again and playing to the same people over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, playing to new faces, it can be kind of scary because, you know, we don't know how they're going to react, or if they're going to hate us, or if they're going to love us, but it kind of doesn't matter because we're still playing in front of new faces. You know what I mean? So I think that has a lot to do with our longevity.
Yeah, you know, like if you play to the same people every time, your band can continue doing that. But I'd imagine that while playing to new people gets your name out there more, it also keeps it interesting for you guys as well. Right?
Yeah, it get boring to just play the same. I mean, the whole like metalcore thing that we get associated with a lot. I mean, we can do that in our sleep.
Yeah.
Which is why we keep releasing these albums that are, you know, they're different from each other, you know, and this is, you know, In Our Wake is the prime example of that. I think. Yeah.
I think bands like us, it's really important to have bands like us that are so all over the place, where we take people that didn't listen to heavy music, that liked lighter stuff, and we pull them over to the heavy side, and they're like, I didn't realize I liked heavy music, or people that like heavy stuff and don't like the softer stuff, or kind of the gateway back the other way, you know, where they'll start listening to more melodic things because it has that element of something they're familiar with and they already like in there. So, I think it's important for bands like us to exist to kind of like open people's minds up and make people
bridge the gap.
Bridge the gap between different styles of music.
You guys, for me, were actually the first band I ever listened to that had screaming incorporated in it, and you know, then it was like Avenged Sevenfold, and then it was Kill Switch, and then it was Morbid Angel, you know what I mean? So, and vice versa, like some people's like, oh, I only listen to Slayer, and then they discovered you guys, and now they like My Chemical Romance.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's just important to be diverse, you know?
Yeah, of course. Now, you kind of, Travis, you mentioned like the metalcore sound, and you know, you guys definitely, not to pigeonhole you guys by any means, but like that is something. But I was curious too, because a lot of people, I ask people, what does metalcore mean? And they say, oh, it's music that has singing and screaming. But I would never consider a band like Opeth or Fear Factory to be metalcore. So like, what makes a band metalcore? Like I would say Shadows Fall was kind of like the Nirvana of that movement.
Here's the thing, metalcore, it doesn't fucking exist. Like it's something that someone just like said one day. Like it's funny, like we are at the forefront of like metalcore, And it's like, how do you guys feel like being at like creating like a genre and being at the forefront of that? It's like, I have no idea. We never were like, hey guys, you know what we need to do? We need to be metalcore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's
it's
our
like,
favorite genre.
It doesn't. I don't even know what it is. I don't know how it exists.
The term didn't exist when we started.
Yeah, it's just it's definitely like, I think we are a very like boundaryless band. So the metalcore thing to us is kind of fun.
And things like screamo and these, it's weird. Like it's interesting that everything needs to be like very specifically defined as like what kind of music is it. Well, it's not just metal. It's this specific black, heavy, whatever goth metal, and it's everything's got these like subcategories and genres, and
it's gonna keep going. We're gonna be in like there's gonna be like a new name for our band because like one of our guitar players is Jewish, and like if you're over a certain weight as a drummer, that's a different style. Like it's gonna be like more and more specific.
Yeah.
I've been making the periodic table of heavy metal subgenres actually.
That's great.
So, but there's like 20 different versions of MC on there. So
That's good.
yeah,
That's good.
But now, being that Atreyu does have a lot of music out there, and you kind of in a way just answered this, but it's fair to say that because your music is so experimental, it obviously there's no pressure in trying new things and taking a new approach to writing, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean every time that we've really like stuck our neck out there and like really kind of like swung for the fences and really tried new things and tried to really expand, it's been the biggest growth for our band. And it's not because things have been more commercial. I think it's just because people like it's just exposed our band to people that maybe wouldn't, like you said, wouldn't listen to heavy music, this and that. But every time we've ever done that, it's been like our biggest kind of leaps as a band, you know?
Yeah. And another question I was really curious with about Atreyu is that being that most of you guys have a role in the vocals as well, so your music definitely has very meaningful lyrics to a lot of people. Do you guys have to like collaborate? Like, does Brendan like approach Alex and be like, okay, you scream here, I sing here, or how?
Kind of. I mean, I feel like it's always Alex has been our main lyric guy, the whole band. He's always come up with I would say 90% of the lyrics up until the last couple records. Like myself or Dan or someone would interject and kind of write parts, and but it kind of always just has come natural. Like he'll have it in his head where it's like I have these ideas, and then like, oh cool, like we do this, whatever, and then I think for the chorus you should do this. But in the verse, I have this in my head where you sing these two lines. You know what I mean? He kind of has an idea, and then we'll kind of mold that and tweak it as it goes.
Yeah, and sometimes the initial idea would be something we don't even end up using, but it triggers. We're like,
Something
we don't,
else.
you know what? Like, we don't like that, but it made me think of this. And now we're doing this, and that ends up being the cool thing, or whatever.
There's been very few times where like I've come up with a part and then the song has based itself kind of around that. Like for instance, the song "The Theft" on Death Grip, I had written the bridge, and the music was inspired by Edward Scissorhands, and I had written lyrics for the bridge, and he had written lyrics for the verses, and whatever, and they were both fit. They made perfect sense with each other, and it was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, and it was like I got inspired by Edward Scissorhands, and he's like, oh, I was inspired by something else, but it totally makes sense with Edward Scissorhands. You know what I mean? So it's like that. There's times where, like, we'll have separate ideas that somehow make sense with each other.
That I've always wondered how bands with multiple lyrics like Lacuna Coil
Yeah.
or We Came as Romans, Rest in Peace to
Yeah.
Kyle, like are able to kind of like sync up lyrics together. Do you guys like have to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or has there ever been a time where like maybe lyrics determine the outcome of the music?
We've always been a music first kind of band. I think the music comes first and then melody. It's pretty rare that we'll have, just because we're such a guitar driven band, it's pretty rare that that a melody will come first. Yeah, I feel like just with multiple singers, the most important thing is just like mutual respect. I think everyone in our band has such a high regard for each other as musicians and writers that it's like when anyone brings something to the table, it's always paid attention to, and that's why it's always kind of been, I think, beneficial to us to have like multiple minds doing the same thing.
Awesome. And now you mentioned you're a guitar-driven band, and being that we have the two guitar players here, do you guys have to like hear a riff and then write a solo over that, or do you guys like hear a song in key and be like, okay, I focus on this scale and this mode? Or
I mean, for me, like I have like a kind of a game plan when writing solos. I mean, I want them to go somewhere. I don't want it to just be this thing. I like it to kind of like Fibonacci sequence, start small and get bigger. It even maybe works its way up the neck where it starts lower and it gets higher. That too, and a lot of times it's just listening to the melodies. The songs, like I like to have a chorus. Once the choruses are done, I kind of listen to the chorus and get the overall gist of the melody that's being used. I like to sometimes refer to that in the solo. So there's things that maybe sound similar to the chorus or go along with it one way or another. So it feels like a part of the song, and it's not just some wanky solo. It's just kind of thrown in just to be a solo.
Yeah. And do you sometimes like maybe like have to adjust your riff style and your rhythmic bass like according to the, because you do more of the rhythm guitar playing as well, right? So like
we trade off here and there, but yeah, I mean, like Dan and I are very different players. You know, he's kind of more straight up the middle, solid, you know, rock foundation. I'm kind of a little bit more of the left of center, weird stuff. So, but there's a lot of times too where Dan will come up with something and I'll be like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? And, you know, sometimes I'll play something where somebody might assume it's Dan.
Yeah.
You know, so we kind of, you know, rub off on each other. That sounds kind of gross. But
I think
It's wonderful.
But yeah, I think it's a nice marriage of the two, you know.
Yeah. Do you guys ever have guitar battles or something like that, or riff battles?
Dude, we've always that's also a mutual respect thing too. I think in the last like couple records, it's like there's no battle, it's just the best solo wins. Like it's like the best solo wins, and like and each of them win. You know, it's like song by song, but it's just like cool.
Yeah.
Nailed this
just,
one.
Yeah, sometimes it works. Sometimes it just works best. You'll hear something and like we have a song called House of Gold. We were doing it, and initially Travis was sitting there trying to come up with stuff, and I heard, I'll hear almost the entire solo, like it just pops into my head. I'm like, I know what we need to do here. Like I know the solo for the song. Like, yeah, I need to do this. You know, this actually a similar thing happened on we have a song called Wait for You. We done Congregation's Ballad, and initially like I said, Travis and I both take turns. Half the solos in the album are me, half of them are him. But it was a situation where like was starting to do it and just wasn't coming up with anything at the time, just wasn't feeling it, and like literally the entire solo like popped in my head. I'm like, I know exactly what to play right now. Like I just got to just give me the guitar, I can figure it out real quick. And it's like, okay, there's the solo, and it just works perfectly. And I wish it always worked like that. You know, sometimes we'll be banging on our heads forever, days trying to come up with something. We're both writing solos for a song, and neither of them are really as awesome as either of us would like. I'm like, fuck. Yeah. I don't know what to do here, but
yeah, sometimes
it both works out.
Sometimes we, you know, it, like you said, it just comes out, and other times, you know, we gotta work really hard.
Yeah, write 20 solos for the same song. Yeah.
You ever worry like the solo that you don't use is gonna end up on like a B-side song and just be the biggest hit you guys will ever have?
Honestly, one of the best guitar solos, my favorite guitar solos on In Our Wake is on one of the B-sides.
It might end up being the biggest hit you guys have ever had, or if it's like Japan only or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny. It was like really hard for that to be a B-side pick for me because of the guitar solo. I was like, fuck, like that's my favorite guitar solo on the record.
And another question I wanted to bring up is because I know you guys are from the Orange County, California scene, so Avenged Sevenfold, Bleeding Through, 18 Visions, As I Lay Dying, Suicide Silence, and I remember watching a previous interview with you guys that like with the style that you guys had, it was a little bit maybe kind of harder to kind of fit into like the hardcore Black Flag hardcore scenes.
Yeah.
So, but being with you guys and Avenged Sevenfold and all those other bands, was it you guys definitely started like the scene?
When we first came out, like we were kind of like the black sheep of the scene, you know, because everybody was very heavy. There's no singing and anything. Everything like you from the 18 Visions and Throwdown, Adamantium, all these bands were super heavy, and like we'd go to these shows and we were really inspired by the energy at these shows and how nuts and people were losing their minds at these shows and doing backflips off the stage and stage diving and huge mosh pits. It was just never seen anything like this. And we were going to punk shows prior, so seeing a hardcore show was just like, holy crap, we want some of this. But because of the way we are, we've never been like, we want to sound like this type of band. We've always been a band that we love so many different styles of music, and like to feel like we're getting what we want out of our band, like we want to sound like everything that we like. So that's where we have the melody and the heavy stuff and all these things. When we first came to the scene, people were kind of like, well, what is this crap? Like, you guys are kind of like these like wussy guys like singing and stuff, and then we're like, whatever, we don't know where else to fit in, you know? And we were a lot heavier initially, but as we started to learn more and become more talented with our musicianship and singing abilities and whatnot, like we could do even more, and then you could feel it start to kind of like rise up in those other bands. I mean, they all did well, but they kind of all hit these peaks where us and Avenged and all the bands that were kind of the black sheep are all the ones that actually became, you know, internationally successful.
Well, I feel like, I mean, sorry to bring up the whole metalcore thing again, but just for lack of better words, because with you guys and Avenged Sevenfold, 18 Visions, Bleeding Through on the West Coast, but the same background was for the metalcore movement on the East Coast with Killswitch Engage, All That Remains, Shadows Fall.
You look at the bands that went further, they did Killswitch, and then later All That Remains, they're the ones that had singing. We're a little bit more diverse, this and that.
Yeah, and they were playing at agnostic front shows
Exactly.
before.
But I
so,
mean, it's funny because at the beginning, like we were, us and Avenged specifically were the fucking outcasts in Orange County. No one wanted anything to do with either of our bands. Like, we had our own thing, they had their own thing. They were like super eyeliner and the stage names, and like at the time we were same thing. It was like we both had our own things, but like no one gave a fuck about us or Avenged Sevenfold in Orange County. And coincidentally, we were both the first bands in Orange County to really like break the seal and like move on to the next level.
Yeah, I remember I interviewed Chris Garza from Suicide Silence, and he said he saw Avenged Sevenfold play for like 15 people at at a club that's no bigger than this conference.
Yeah, we toured with Avenged. This is years and years ago. It was us, Avenged Sevenfold, and this band called Hopes Fall, and they were opening.
To go back even further, the way that we got signed initially to Victory Records was we got discovered on the internet, and we'd send a bunch of CDs out to everybody except for Victory, and then somehow somebody from Victory, this girl Kathy, contacted us, and we were like, well, we might even be the first band to ever be signed because of the internet. This was in like 2001, I think, 2002. One of the things, she was like, I want to come out and see you guys play. And we're like, all right, well, we're playing a party on the beach in this place called Lake Elsinore with this band called Avenged Sevenfold. And we're playing like a club the next week. We're playing this place called Chain Reaction. So she literally flew out and came to a party like on the beach with us and Avenged Sevenfold playing. Yeah. And there's probably maybe like 60, 70 people there, you know. But we also played another show, ironically, with Avenged Sevenfold, where Brian, the guitar player, Sinister Gates, was playing bass. They were a 4-piece at the time.
Because they lost their bass players. They didn't have a bass player.
Oh, this was before Johnny Christ was
in
the
so
band.
Brian played guitar and Zach, or played bass and Zach played guitar.
It's probably like around 2000, 2001, something like that. Yeah, it was super strange, especially because Brian being the lead guitar player, to take the bass role was really interesting. Yeah. You'd think he'd want to rip all the solos and whatnot.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's interesting when everyone starts somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I was in first grade at that time, so
that's awesome.
Way to make me feel old.
Well, that's fine because I was only in second. We just bloomed very young.
Okay.
We started touring when I was in third grade. So.
Rock and roll keeps you young.
We're not old, actually.
I remember before we talked, we were going to do a quick gear rundown because the way you guys were playing last night was really unique. You know, I mean, I've heard so many artists, I just use ESP because it sounds good. But I'd imagine because of the way you guys play and your live presence and everything, you have to have like a certain set of gear that kind of fits perfectly for you guys, right? Yeah. So you want to give a quick weapons rundown?
Well, Dan and I both recently just switched over to the digital world for, using Kempers.
Sell out. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, nowadays it's, the technology is so advanced, even like seasoned studio vets are switching over because, nobody can really tell the difference between the real amp and then the modeled amp. Yeah.
We actually recorded our entire this album was completely recorded with Kempers.
Wow.
Yeah, everything you hear is Kemper.
And just the ease of it, especially for touring purposes, it just makes everything just so much more streamlined, and we don't have to worry about, obviously tubes and the power in the room, and like all my effects are coming from the Kemper, so I don't have to bring my heavy ass pedal board with me.
Yeah. So much more efficient.
Yeah.
So much more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, more consistent. Like, because when you're using tube amps and stuff, like everywhere you go, like the weather can change the way your amp sounds. And every day your amp never sounds the same. And it's like, some days you're like, oh, it sounds incredible today. I just want to play my guitar all day because it sounds so good. And then sometimes you get up and you're like, what the hell is wrong with my amp today? It just sounds like crap,
I work in musical gear, and like I'm so paranoid about tube amps that even if it's like the size of a microcube, I carry it on a hand truck because those things break.
You're fucked.
Yeah, those tubes are like each tube's like $100 or something. Like so.
And if you're on stage too live and you hear yourself sounding like shit, it just ruins the whole show for you.
Yeah.
We've been for years we've been renting gear places. Like we'd fly out whatever. Say we're going to like Australia or something like that. We don't want to fly a bunch of gear out there, so we would just rent stuff. And a lot of times they just I want this specific Marshall whatever JCM 800 something. Like, we have this Marshall 2000 whatever thing. We're like, oh, okay, totally not even the same thing, and not even a good sounding head. Where you're like, man, like it's not. Yes, it's a Marshall, but it's not the same thing. It sounds like crap. Like. And you just have to deal with it, Whereas now with for instance with the Kempers, I literally fly my tone everywhere. I have my wireless unit and my head as a carry-on. So when we do fly dates or something like that, I can just fly anywhere, bring my exact tone, my pedal board, everything's exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Volumes are all set, everything's perfect every time.
Yeah, and coming from California earthquake zone, I think Kemper's a better choice. I mean, those things could survive an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're beasts.
Now, as for you, I mean, this guy plays the floor tom, he plays the bass drum, the cymbals, the snare. He's that talented.
I play all
at
those
once.
instruments.
Yeah. So let's give a rundown of what you, because I was curious, being that you also sing, if maybe your drum set is kind of adjusted to that as well.
Not really. I mean, I just kind of the vocal singing part is more. It's just inconvenient. I have to just like make it as comfortable as I can. But I've tried like the whole headset mic thing like once, and it's just I feel too stupid. And two, it's awkward.
It makes you look like a jackass.
I was still going like this to sing, even though I didn't need to. Like still used to it, but as far as singing thing, I never really adjusted. But as far as my gear, I played Truth drums.
Oh, that's a first.
Yeah, Evans heads, Zildjian cymbals, Vic Firth sticks, and DW hardware.
Yeah, you know, I've interviewed many drummers before, and you know, obviously the center goal is like to keep rhythm and keep beat, to keep, you know, your drummer sucks, your band sucks. But I've noticed they're the biggest gear nerds in the world. For like, drums always goes back to the same purpose, but at the same time, it seems like everybody is so specific.
There's people that are really particular and like measure their shit, and it's like this whole thing. And obviously, as a drummer, you want your drums to like look cool. I mean, I feel like I've paid a lot of attention to like how cool my drums look. Then, but you know, it's like your identity. You know, it's like having a guitar, like a cool looking guitar. It's like a little piece of your identity. You know.
Yeah, I think that's and one thing that was really important to us. You know, with not just the way stuff sounds, but is the aesthetics of everything. You know, like even like Brandon's saying, he'll set up his drums a certain way. Like I was talking about, like, oh, it'd be cool to have your cymbals a certain way, or have like this kind of flow to them, where it's not just having it or to play, but it's cool to look at, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, with my guitars in particular, like I feel like, you know, when you go on stage, you're putting on a show, and I want my guitars alone to be able to put on a show, you know, aside from me even just playing it, you know. So a lot of times, even though we're tuned to the same thing, I'll switch guitars on stage just because I want an aesthetic change. So the crowd doesn't see me just playing the same guitar all the time. Like, I could play the same guitar the whole time, but what's the fun in that?
You have a signature look with your guitar. I thought originally you played like that Bloody Dan Jacobs guitar. I thought that was your model, but from being up close last night...
oh yeah, I have a new one last night. This is my Seinfeld guitar.
Okay.
It's the DJ7, I like to call it.
Okay. And going back to the singing and drumming, you know, you either throw out your neck singing at the same time, or you look like a Decepticon.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the neck throw. Yeah, but it's just gotten comfortable. I actually, like, just recently, after like, you know, 15 plus years of touring and singing, it's like I just recently got like a piece of hardware that will efficiently hold my mic stand the way I need it to, and I've never done that before until now.
Awesome.
Always learning.
And I just have two more questions for you guys.
Cool.
You know, as somebody who's seen you live before, I actually didn't see you guys live until you returned from hiatus. But, like, to me, your live presence is something so intriguing. Like, when I saw you guys live for the first time, it was like a completely... I mean, you hit the songs note for note perfectly, but it's also, like, a very different experience than listening to you guys on a pair of headphones. For you guys, playing live versus playing in the studio or a practice space, how different of an experience is it for you?
I think it's just amplified a little bit. I mean, not literally with amplifiers, but I think that us live, there's a energy that can only come across at our shows. I think it's just, I don't know, like, we've always been that band that it's a completely different experience live. Like, people have always seen us and been like, and like we've always tried to capture that live energy on record, but like it's just something that happens on stage. So it's definitely a different, you know.
Yeah, I think we've had a thing that we noticed, especially a long time ago, where a lot of people would hear our album, and maybe you're not a huge screaming music fan or something like that. They hear it like, oh, you know, this, you know, this is kind of cool. I guess I get into this. And people come see us live, and they're like, oh, I get it now. Like, and it's because it's not the way we are live is not. I think it's not what people would think. You know, especially with the way metalcore bands are, or whatever. I feel like people just think we would just kind of fit into this niche of like, oh, they're that kind of band. They'll probably do the same moves that everybody else does, but like. We're just not like that. We have a very, you know, unique kind of classic rock mixed with...
Very lighthearted, too.
Yeah, very lighthearted, kind of, we're very fun, even though our music is very, you know, especially lyrically, a lot can be kind of dark, dramatic stuff, but like on stage, we're just kind of, you know, just kind of fun, good time, and...
Well, both, as I mentioned before, I think you guys really capture both vibes. Like, I've listened to your music at parties before, and I've listened to your music like during very dark times.
Yeah.
So you guys definitely like, and live too. I mean, you have songs where people are like waving their lighters or their cell phone lights too.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's 2018. We don't use lighters anymore.
Yeah.
But and then you like have songs that people are kicking the crap out of each other in the pit too.
Yeah. I think it all comes back to like the beginning of this interview, talking about just like being purposely diverse as a band. It's like those peaks and valleys happen on our album, they happen live too. Like our sets go up and down and kind of take you on a journey, and I think that that's what makes our band, exciting.
Going back to the live thing too, I think the one thing that I've heard the most that people say is, "You guys look like you're having fun," and we are.
Yeah.
That's the goddamn point.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. And, live, I've seen people in Slayer shirts at your shows, and I've seen people in, like, My Chemical Romance shirts at your shows. So I really feel like your music brings a lot of different aspects of metal together.
Absolutely.
You get rid of the division in metal.
Yeah. Unity!
And the final question I wanted to ask you guys is, and this is just me being a fan of you guys, because I discovered you guys when I was 11 years old. I didn't even finish elementary school yet. Right Side of the Bed, featured on Burnout 3
That's
Takedown.
awesome.
Can you just tell me if you have any memories of that back in the day?
Isn't that our first video game that we were on?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I remember getting a copy of it and playing it on tour. So whenever I hear any of those songs, it literally brings me back
Is
to
that second gear? Third gear!
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I actually, because as we were talking before we started rolling, that this was like every band on this, like, it's how I discovered Newfound Glory, Funeral for a Friend, 18 Visions, My Chemical Romance, like, and like I have a playlist of just those songs, and if you go back to the date, it's the first music going back to like April of 2005.
That's
that
awesome.
I downloaded it on iTunes.
Well, those stuff like that did wonders for bands in our genre, especially like small. Like we weren't small, but we hadn't like broken into like mainstream at all. So to have songs on like Burnout, we did a song on the Underworld soundtrack, and then we were like on the DVD and stuff. So many people come to like our signings and shit, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like I found out your band because I bought the Underworld DVD. I don't even listen to this kind of music, and your video was on there, and like that's how I found your band." Or I was playing Burnout, but it's the same thing for us back in the day, like playing Tony Hawk and being like fans of like Goldfinger and bands like that from Tony Hawk. It's like that's such a good outlet to get music to people.
Absolutely. How many people know Cannibal Corpse because of Ace Ventura?
Yep, absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, look at there's bands that have been created from like that started doing stuff for TV and film that turned into like ex-ambassadors. It's like a huge band that started doing songs for that. It creates itself.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Like, I mean, I figure we're promoting the new record, but we might as well do tomorrow's Thursday, so we'll do a throwback.
Throwback Thursday.
Yeah.
Burnout 3, go play it.
Yep. Most frustrating racing game, but so many great memories.
I just remember them playing it. And I'm not really a big video game dude, but like in the back lawns of the bus, and you would always just hear
the soundtrack.
third gear, second gear. That was like one of the things that would just be yelled all the time from that game. That's what I remember.
It's so like crazy. I've developed a psychological complex from this game. Every time I see
just beats you down.
Every time I see a speeding car, I get absolutely pissed off.
Awesome.
I moved to the city for the sole purpose of not driving, and it's thanks to this game.
There
right
you
here.
go.
And that's how I discovered you guys as well.
Oh yeah.
As well as so many other bands. But
That's fucking awesome.
I want to thank you guys so much for your time.
Oh, yeah.
You guys did an awesome performance. You have your up and coming tour with Memphis May Fire and Ice Nine Kills. Is there anything else you would like to promote for the In Our Wake record cycle?
I mean, that's just it. This is just the beginning. We're stoked. That tour's going to be a lot of fun, and we're stoked to just get back out there and be touring again. It's been a couple years since we've been touring the States, so we're ready to get out there.
Yeah, you probably have like a tour in Europe or somewhere booked. You just can't discuss it.
We'll
yet.
be doing next year. We're doing Europe and a lot more other things. We're just getting started. If you're upset because we didn't play your town on this tour, don't be upset, because we'll probably get there eventually.
Awesome. And if not, you could play Burnout 3.
Exactly.
Yep. I mean, it was $39. This is the original copy. It was $39.99 back then. I had to save up on my allowance back in the day. That was before GoFundMe.
Yep.
And and now you could probably get this on eBay for like 50 cents.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Of course, thank you.
Everybody, we are here with Atreyu. Be sure to pick up In Our Wake out on Spine Farm Records. Catch them on their up-and-coming tour with Memphis May Fire and Ice Nine Kills. And we'll see you next time in Heavy New York, everybody.